When heaven held its breath, the first sound was the hammer striking the nail. The impact reverberated through the cosmic realms, a sound so ordinary to human ears yet so catastrophic to celestial ones. The angel flinched, its magnificent wings contracting in horror. This wasn't the first death this immortal being had witnessed. It had observed countless human lives fade over millennia. But this was different. This was watching God die. Across the vast expanse of the universe, legions of angels were watching. Heaven had never been so silent. The beings who had spent eternity in ceaseless worship now stood frozen, their songs replaced by a collective held breath. How could this be happening? The creator of galaxies, the one who had scattered stars across the void with a word, now hung suspended between heaven and earth on rough-hewn wood, bleeding, gasping for each breath. The angel who had been assigned to the hill, called Golgotha, gripped the hilt of its flaming sword so tightly that celestial energy crackled around its fingers. Every instinct within its being screamed to intervene, to sweep down in righteous fury and end this abomination. One gesture would be enough to obliterate the entire Roman garrison. One word could summon 12 legions of heaven's most fearsome warriors. The power was there. The desire was overwhelming. Yet the order from the throne was clear. Stand down. Observe. Do not interfere. What does an immortal being do when it witnesses the death of its immortal Lord? What happens when ultimate power meets ultimate restraint? What did the angels do when they saw the Son of God die? This is not merely a historical question. This is a journey into the heart of the greatest paradox in all existence, a moment when heaven's power stood still so that heaven's love could reach its fullest expression. And understanding what those angels experienced will forever change how you view the cross. For in that moment when divine blood spilled onto human soil, the universe witnessed something more powerful than creation itself: redemption, the warriors of light. Before we journey deeper into this cosmic drama, we must understand who these witnesses were. Angels are not the chubby cherubs depicted on Valentine's cards or the delicate figurines adorning Christmas trees. They are beings of terrifying power and unimaginable glory. In Isaiah's vision, he encountered seraphim with 6 wings, whose voices alone made the massive temple columns tremble as they cried, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory." Just one angel, in the time of King Hezekiah, obliterated 185,000 Assyrian soldiers in a single night. These are warriors of light, ambassadors of divine will, created before the foundations of the earth were laid. When God spoke the universe into existence, Job 38:7 tells us that the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Angels were the first audience to the spectacle of creation, watching in awe as galaxies spiraled into being at their Creator's command. For countless ages they had witnessed the unfolding of the divine plan across human history, guarding Eden's gates, guiding Abraham's journey, protecting Daniel among lions, delivering messages to prophets and kings. Yet despite their might and knowledge, there remained mysteries even to them. As 1 Peter 1:12 reveals, there are things into which angels long to look. They do not possess omniscience. They learn, they wonder, they question, and nothing, absolutely nothing, in their timeless existence had prepared them for what they were now witnessing. The eternal Word, whom they had worshipped since before time began, had not only taken human form, but was now surrendering to death itself. The immortal choosing mortality, the invulnerable embracing vulnerability, the judge submitting to judgment. They had been created for one primary purpose: to serve and protect the divine will. But what happens when that will commands them to witness the unthinkable and do nothing? This was not merely a test of obedience, it was a revelation of a love so profound that even celestial beings struggled to comprehend its depths. The Garden of Agony. Gethsemane, the name itself means oil press in Aramaic. How fitting that in this ancient olive garden, the Son of God would be pressed with the weight of all humanity's sin until his very capillaries burst under the pressure, causing blood to mingle with his sweat. The angels had watched Jesus throughout his earthly ministry, his miracles, his teachings, his compassion. But nothing had prepared them for what transpired in that garden. As darkness settled over Jerusalem, the heavenly hosts gathered above Gethsemane, sensing that a pivotal moment in the divine plan was unfolding. "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death," Jesus told his disciples, before walking deeper into the garden to pray. The angels could see what human eyes could not. The darkness gathering around him was not merely the absence of light, but the concentrated presence of evil. Every sin, every act of violence, every betrayal that humanity had committed or would commit was being placed upon his shoulders. In the celestial realm, Michael, the archangel who had once cast Satan from heaven, assembled his legions. "Stand ready," he commanded, his hand on his flaming sword. The heavenly warriors, who had defended God's honor against Lucifer's rebellion, were poised for battle. Never had they felt such tension, such readiness to intervene. Then came the moment that broke heaven's heart. As Jesus fell to the ground, his body convulsing with the emotional and spiritual agony, he cried out, "Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me." A ripple of hope surged through the angelic ranks. Perhaps the Father would relent. Perhaps another way would be found. Perhaps they would be commanded to rescue the Son from what was to come. But then came the words that sealed the divine commitment. "Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." Luke 22:43 records what happened next. Then an angel appeared to him from heaven, strengthening him. One angel, singular. Out of the countless millions of heavenly beings who yearned to comfort their Lord, only one received permission to descend. This chosen messenger did not come to remove Jesus from suffering, but to strengthen him to endure it. The selected angel moved through the veil between worlds, materializing beside the trembling form of the Son of God. What words were exchanged, what comfort was offered, Scripture does not say. But this much we know: the angel did not stop the suffering, it enabled Jesus to bear it. When the angel returned to the heavenly ranks, no words were needed. The grim determination on the messenger's face told the story. The Son would proceed with the plan that had been established before the foundation of the world. The most difficult command the angels had ever received was confirmed. They would watch, but not intervene, as salvation's story reached its most agonizing chapter. The deafening silence of heaven. When the soldiers came with torches and weapons, led by Judas, the tension in the spiritual realm reached its breaking point. Peter, in a desperate act of loyalty, drew his sword and struck Malchus, cutting off his ear. For a fleeting moment, the angels thought this might be the signal, the beginning of resistance, the moment when the plan would change direction. Then, Jesus spoke words that reverberated through both earthly and heavenly realms. "Do you think that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he will provide me with more than 12 legions of angels?" Matthew 26:53. 12 legions, at least 72,000 warriors of heaven, stood poised on the edge of manifestation, their weapons drawn, wings extended, waiting for a command that would never come. In the celestial dimension, Michael had positioned his forces strategically around Jerusalem. Gabriel's messengers stood ready to announce divine intervention. The seraphim had ceased their eternal worship, their attention fixed entirely on the unfolding drama. As Jesus was bound and led away, an unprecedented silence fell across heaven. It was not the silence of peace, but the excruciating quiet of deliberate restraint. Throughout human history, angels had intervened countless times to protect God's servants. They had shut lions' mouths for Daniel, guided Israel through the wilderness with pillars of fire and cloud, struck down Herod when he accepted worship, and freed the apostles from prison. Their entire existence had been defined by swift action in defense of divine purposes. But now, as the Son of God himself was falsely accused, mockingly tried, and viciously beaten, heaven received the most difficult command in its history: stand down. In the unseen realm surrounding Jerusalem, a different battle was taking place. Demonic forces, sensing victory, pressed closer, their dark influence strengthening the hatred in the hearts of Jesus' accusers. They whispered lies, fueled anger, and celebrated what they believed was their moment of triumph. The angels watched as Pilate questioned Jesus, as the crowd chose Barabbas instead, as the soldiers placed a crown of thorns on his head and mockingly bowed before him. Every instinct of these mighty beings cried out for justice, for intervention, for the display of divine power that would reveal the true identity of the one being abused. One young angel, witnessing his first earthly assignment, turned to a senior messenger beside him. "Why?" he asked, his voice breaking with emotion. "Why must we watch this? We could end it in an instant." The elder angel, who had witnessed creation itself, replied without taking his eyes off the scene below, "Because love has chosen a path that power alone could never take." As Jesus took up his cross and began the journey to Golgotha, heaven's silence grew heavier with each painful step. The restraint of divine power was not weakness. It was the most powerful act of love the universe would ever witness. The darkest hours, the place called Golgotha, the skull, seemed aptly named as Jesus arrived, exhausted and bloodied from his journey through Jerusalem's streets. The angels, who had observed countless crucifixions since Rome adopted this method of execution, knew exactly what was coming. But this time, the condemned was not merely human. As the soldiers laid Jesus on the rough wooden beams, the first nail was positioned against his wrist. The hammer was raised. The blow fell. In that instant, Michael, commander of heaven's armies, could contain himself no longer. His wings unfurled to their full magnificent span, his sword blazed with celestial fire, and he moved to descend, only to feel the restraining hand of Gabriel on his shoulder. "Not yet," Gabriel whispered, though his own face reflected the agony that all heaven felt. "This is the plan. This is the moment all creation has waited for." "I've led armies against Satan himself," Michael responded, his voice breaking. "I've cast down rebellious powers, but this, to watch him suffer when we could end it." The conversation ended as the second nail pierced Jesus' other wrist. The sound of metal tearing through flesh and striking wood rippled through spiritual realms like thunder. Angels who had sung at creation's dawn now wept openly. When the soldiers hoisted the cross upright, dropping it with a jarring thud into its prepared hole, Jesus' body wrenched against the nails. The full weight of his frame now hung from those wounds, making each breath a conscious act of excruciating effort. To inhale, he would need to push up on his pierced feet, causing fresh waves of agony. From noon until 3 in the afternoon, an unnatural darkness covered the land. This was not merely an eclipse, this was divine intervention of a different kind. As Jesus took upon himself the sins of humanity, the Father turned his face away. The perfect communion that had existed between Father and Son from eternity past was temporarily severed. For the angels, this was the most incomprehensible moment of all. Throughout eternity, they had witnessed the perfect love and harmony of the Trinity. Now, for the first time, they observed separation within the Godhead itself. The cosmic implications were beyond their understanding. In the midst of this darkness, the cosmic battle reached its climax. Satan, who had been circling like a predator sensing victory, now moved closer to the cross, certain that the divine plan had failed. The demonic forces pressed in, expecting the Son of God to use his power to save himself or to die in defeat. Then came the cry that would echo through eternity, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani? My God, why have you forsaken me?" The angels trembled at these words. Never in all of cosmic history had the Son experienced separation from the Father. This was not merely physical agony, but spiritual desolation beyond comprehension. At this moment, something shifted in the spiritual atmosphere. The darkness seemed to grow even deeper, but a subtle change rippled through the heavenly hosts. Though they could not fully understand what was happening, they sensed that this apparent defeat was transforming into something else entirely, that what looked like the darkest moment in divine history was actually the cusp of its greatest victory. Jesus' final words, "It is finished," were not spoken in defeat, but in triumph. As his head bowed and his spirit departed, the veil in the temple tore from top to bottom. The earth itself shook, graves opened, all of nature responded to the death of its creator. And heaven, which had been holding its breath in agonizing silence, now prepared for what would come next. The silent Saturday. After the tumult of Friday, the earth shaking, the temple veil tearing, the sun hiding its face, Saturday arrived with an eerie stillness. The body of the Son of God lay wrapped in linen, sealed behind a massive stone in Joseph of Arimathea's tomb. Heaven, which had never before experienced the death of its Lord, now entered the most unusual period in its eternal existence, waiting. For angels who exist outside the constraints of time as humans know it, this single day stretched like an eternity. These beings, created for action and purpose, now found themselves in a suspended state of anticipation. The prophecies were clear. On the third day, resurrection would come. But what of this day between, this silent Saturday? Gabriel gathered the heavenly hosts for a solemn assembly. The prophecies state 3 days, he reminded them. Not 2, not 4. Exactly 3. The enemies of our Lord know this too. Even now, they place guards at the tomb, thinking to prevent what they cannot possibly stop. Indeed, while the disciples hid in fear and confusion, the religious leaders approached Pilate with an ironic request. "Sir, we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise.'" Matthew 27:63. Guards were posted, a Roman seal placed on the stone, human precautions against divine inevitability. In the spiritual realm, forces of darkness mounted their final defense. Satan, initially triumphant at the death of the Son, now experienced creeping doubt. The confidence that had swelled during the crucifixion began to waver as he recalled prophecies that suddenly seemed more threatening than before. Demonic sentinels were positioned around the tomb, a futile final stand against what was to come. Meanwhile, in the realm called Paradise, where the souls of the righteous dead awaited final redemption, an unprecedented event was taking place. The Spirit of Jesus, during these hours, was not inactive. As 1 Peter 3:19 tells us, he went and preached to the spirits in prison. Adam and Eve, Abraham, David, and all the faithful who had died believing in the promise of a coming Messiah, now found themselves in the presence of the fulfillment of that promise. Back in the angelic realm, a celestial countdown had begun. Senior angels, those who had witnessed the creation of time itself, now marked its passing with unprecedented attention. 36 hours since the death, 24 hours remaining until the appointed moment. 18 hours. 12. A young guardian angel assigned to Mary Magdalene approached one of the seraphim with a question that reflected what many were thinking. What if the humans move the body? What if they destroy it to prevent verification of the resurrection? The ancient seraph, whose 6 wings had never ceased their motion since before the foundation of the world, replied with quiet certainty, "They are trying to use death to contain life itself. They might as well try to hold back the ocean with their hands." As night fell on Saturday in Jerusalem, tension in the spiritual realm reached its peak. The disciples slept fitfully, their dreams troubled by the traumatic images of the crucifixion and their futures now uncertain. The guards at the tomb struggled to stay alert, unsettled by their unusual assignment. The women prepared spices for a proper burial, planning to visit the tomb at first light. And the angels, organized now in concentric circles around Jerusalem, around the garden, around the tomb itself, waited in perfect formation for the command they knew would soon come, the command they had been created to herald since before time began. Roll away the stone. The silence of Saturday was not the silence of inaction, but the held breath before the greatest proclamation in cosmic history, the explosion of joy. Before the first light of dawn touched Jerusalem's eastern hills, something shifted in the cosmic order. Inside the sealed tomb, in complete darkness, life stirred where death had reigned. No human eye witnessed the actual moment when the Son of God reclaimed his body, transformed it, and sat up among the burial linens. But the angels saw. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the command they had longed to hear through the agonizing silence of Friday and the tense anticipation of Saturday. Now came the decree from the throne of heaven. Matthew 28, 2-4 gives us only the briefest glimpse of what happened next. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat on it. His countenance was like lightning and his clothing as white as snow. And the guards shook for fear of him and became like dead men. What Scripture describes in 3 verses was, for the angels, the most glorious mobilization in all celestial history. The selected angel, tradition suggests it was Gabriel, descended with such power that the earth itself responded with seismic tremors. The massive stone, which had required several men to position, was flung aside as easily as a child might toss a pebble. But here's what many don't understand. The angel didn't come to let Jesus out. When the heavenly messenger arrived, Jesus had already risen. The stone was rolled away not to release the Son of God, but to reveal to the world that he was already gone. Death could not hold him. The Roman guards, elite soldiers trained to face death without flinching, fell unconscious at the mere presence of a single angel. These men who had stood unmoved while executing criminals now lay as helpless as children before heaven's power. As the angel took his position seated upon the stone, a posture of both victory and casual dominance, the first wave of heavenly celebration began. The restraint that had characterized the angelic response during the crucifixion gave way to uninhibited joy. The beings who had been commanded to watch in silence were now released to proclaim in exultation. Soon after, Mary Magdalene and the other women arrived at the tomb, finding it empty. Their confusion was met with the most important announcement in human history, delivered by angels whose faces still shone with the glory of what they had witnessed. He is not here, for he is risen as he said. Matthew 28, 6. For the angels, these words were not merely information. They were the culmination of a plan they had observed from the foundation of the world. The perfect fusion of divine justice and mercy, prophecy and fulfillment, death and life. What followed in the next 40 days were multiple appearances of the risen Christ, to Mary in the garden, to the disciples behind locked doors, to the travelers on the Emmaus road, to more than 500 believers at once. Each appearance confirmed what the angels already knew: death had been defeated on its own territory. One of the most profound transformations occurred in the heart of Thomas, who had declared he would not believe unless he could touch the wounds himself. When Jesus appeared and offered exactly that opportunity, Thomas's response, "My Lord and my God," echoed what angels had proclaimed from eternity. For these heavenly beings, who had witnessed the entire arc of salvation history, there was particular joy in seeing humans finally comprehend what they had always known. This Jesus was not merely a prophet or teacher, but God incarnate, who had conquered the unconquerable enemy. The Roman centurion who had overseen the crucifixion became a believer after witnessing both Jesus' manner of death and the supernatural signs that followed. According to tradition, this man, Longinus by name, became one of the early evangelists of the Christian faith, his testimony especially powerful coming from one who had participated in the execution itself. With each new witness, each new believer, heaven's celebration grew. The angels, who had stood in silent agony during the crucifixion, now rejoiced with each soul that embraced the risen Lord. The restraint of Friday had given way to the unbridled exultation of Sunday, and it would never end. The eternal witnesses. 40 days after the resurrection, the disciples gathered on the Mount of Olives. Jesus had instructed them to wait in Jerusalem until they received power from on high. As they stood questioning him about the restoration of Israel's kingdom, something remarkable happened. Acts 9-11 records it simply. Now when he had spoken these things, while they watched, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And while they looked steadfastly toward heaven as he went up, behold, 2 men stood by them in white apparel, who also said, "Men of Galilee, why do you stand gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus who was taken up from you into heaven will so come in like manner as you saw him go into heaven." What the disciples witnessed as a cloud taking Jesus from sight was, for the angels, the triumphant return of the King. The Son, bearing now the marks of his sacrifice in his glorified body, ascended through the atmospheric heavens and into the realm beyond physical sight. As he approached, the gates of heaven, which had never before been closed to him, opened wide in welcome. Psalm 24, 7-8 seems to capture this moment prophetically. "Lift up your heads, O you gates, and be lifted up, you everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in." Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. The battle had indeed been mighty, and the victory complete. The Son who had left heaven's glory to become human now returned, bringing something new with him, a glorified human nature, forever united with his divine nature. Hebrews 9:12 tells us, "Not with the blood of goats and calves, but with his own blood, he entered the most holy place once for all, having obtained eternal redemption." The great high priest presented his own sacrifice, himself, as the perfect and final offering. For the angels who had witnessed the entire saga from Gethsemane to Golgotha to the garden tomb, this moment represented the completion of a perfect circle. The one they had seen suffer in unimaginable agony was now exalted to the highest place. The one they had been restrained from rescuing was now revealed as the ultimate rescuer. But here is where our story takes an unexpected turn. The angels' involvement didn't end with the ascension. Their mission, in many ways, was just beginning. Hebrews 1:14 describes angels as ministering spirits sent forth to minister for those who will inherit salvation. With the redemptive work of Christ complete, these heavenly beings received a new assignment: to assist in the spread of this good news throughout the world. Throughout the book of Acts, we see angels freeing apostles from prison, directing evangelists to new territories, protecting missionaries in danger, and strengthening believers under persecution. The same beings who had watched in silent agony during the crucifixion now participated actively in the expansion of its message. And here is the most remarkable truth of all. This angelic witness continues to this day. When you take communion, when you remember the sacrifice of Christ, you are not doing so alone. The angels who saw it happen are present, witnessing your remembrance of what they can never forget. Luke 15:10 reveals that there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Every time a human heart turns to Christ, the angelic celebration that began at the empty tomb continues and expands. So, what did the angels do when they saw the Son of God die? They obeyed the hardest command they had ever received, to stand down when every instinct called them to action. They watched in silent agony as divine love played out its perfect plan. They waited through the longest Saturday in cosmic history, and then they erupted in joy that has never diminished and never will. The next time you look at a cross, remember, you are not the only one looking. The angels who were there still bear witness, and they invite you to join them in worshiping the Lamb who was slain but now lives forever, the ultimate demonstration that love is stronger than death and restraint can be the highest form of power. For in the end, what the angels witnessed was not merely the death of their Lord, but the birth of a salvation so perfect that even they, with all their heavenly wisdom, desire to look into its mysteries. As we navigate the middle passages of our lives, many of us find ourselves in moments that require impossible restraint. Watching loved ones suffer, enduring situations we cannot control, or facing circumstances where our power seems inadequate against overwhelming challenges. Perhaps you've stood by a hospital bed, powerless to ease pain. Maybe you've watched a child make devastating choices while your hands were tied. Or perhaps you faced a career setback that left you questioning your worth and purpose. The story of the angels at the crucifixion speaks directly to these modern crucibles. Like those celestial beings, we often find ourselves caught between what we want to do and what we must do, between intervention and patient endurance. Their silent witness reminds us that sometimes the greatest strength isn't found in exerting power, but in showing restraint for a greater purpose. When you feel helpless in the face of suffering, yours or others, remember that even divine power once chose restraint for the sake of love. When you question why God seems silent in your darkest hours, recall that history's darkest Friday preceded its brightest Sunday. The angels learned what we must learn. Apparent defeat may be the precursor to ultimate victory. Your story isn't finished. The silence that feels like abandonment may be the pause before redemption. The restraint that feels like weakness may actually be your greatest demonstration of strength. And the tears you shed now may be preparing the way for a joy beyond imagination. Like the angels who witnessed both the cross and the empty tomb, you too are called to endure the tension between Friday's pain and Sunday's promise, knowing that in God's economy, love's restraint always gives way to resurrection's triumph. If this perspective on the angels at the crucifixion has touched your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What moment in this story resonated most deeply with you? Perhaps you have your own insights about divine restraint and love's power. Don't miss our upcoming videos exploring more hidden dimensions of familiar Bible stories. Subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to be first to know when new content arrives. If you found value in today's message, please consider sharing it with someone who might need this perspective, someone walking through their own silent Saturday who needs hope for Sunday. And if this content has blessed you, your like helps others discover it too. Every engagement allows these messages to reach more people searching for deeper understanding. Thank you for being part of this journey of faith and discovery.